So UFC 306, it's officially just a little over a couple weeks away, and the closer and closer we get to this event, the more painful it becomes when you remember just how insanely crazy Dana White was in hyping this card up. I mean, a lot of people, they seem to not remember, but Dana made it very clear he was going to put on the greatest night of fights the world has ever seen. He said this was going to be the greatest combat sports event in the history of combat sports events. He said his exact words were, "It's going to be orgasmic to your eyeballs." Which, look, I like the sound of all that, but those are some big words that you're going to have to fulfill to us. You know what I mean? And the closer and closer we get to it, it just seems like that's not going to happen because the sole title fight we have on that card is Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili. And, it's funny because on paper, you look at it and you say, well, maybe this fight is very, very interesting because you got Merab, who's just this insane wrestler, insane gas tank. He goes all day long. His goal is obviously to take you down. And then we have Sean O'Malley, who's a striker, tall, lanky, very fast. He's a knockout artist. And in theory, he wouldn't want to get taken down. So you look at this matchup and you say, okay, well, maybe this is kind of interesting. But then you remember that it's not. It's not that interesting, okay? This might be one of the most lopsided title fights in the history of title fights. And it's crazy to say that, but I think stylistically, I think you look at what both of these guys bring to the table, and you see, first of all, there are two scenarios to how this fight will go. Okay, it's either going to go to decision or it's going to be a Sean O'Malley knockout. All right, Merab, he has certainly had a lot of moments in his career that surprised a lot of people, right? Nobody expected him to 50-45 Peter Yan. Nobody expected him to wrestle fucking Olympic gold medal wrestler. And, I can understand why to certain people they say, okay, wow, well, look, if he gets a hold of Sean O'Malley, Sean's in trouble. But again, he just simply isn't. He's not. If Merab gets a hold of Sean O'Malley, he's not in trouble. Nobody is necessarily in trouble if Merab gets a hold of you. It just doesn't exist. You go back and you look at the Peter Yan fight, and I don't want to understate it, right? Merab's cardio, it was absolutely insane. It probably is the best in the UFC. He weaponizes it very, very well. But for how blown away people were by that performance at the time, you would assume Peter just got smashed at some point. You would assume through that crazy pace Merab was putting on him, at some point Peter just broke. At some point Peter got taken down, he got smashed, he got his manhood taken away, and he still has never gotten it back since then. That's what you would assume, especially since after that fight, people were saying that pace was inhuman. They were saying it didn't make any sense how Merab was keeping that pace up. They were saying it doesn't make any sense that a human could do that over 5 rounds. You go all the way to the 5th round of that fight, all the way to the very, very end. Merab never controlled Peter on the ground for any significant length of time, ever. By round 2, it seemed like Yan was getting overwhelmed. It seemed like it was too much for him. But throughout the entirety of that fight, Merab never really did anything with his takedown apart from threaten with it. He would shoot the takedown, get pretty deep on it. He might have gotten Peter down. He might have sat him down with the takedown, but then Peter would just turtle, get back up, and then Merab would just rinse and repeat. He never actually did anything with his takedowns, ever. But I want to say it again, I'm not trying to say that Merab's constant takedown threats, it's not like they're not formidable. They are. It certainly is a problem against a lot of guys. It works. It allows him to win fights. But the notion that Sean's in trouble if he gets taken down, the notion Sean can't get taken down or he has to avoid the takedown, that's just not true. He can 100% get taken down, and he will stand back up. Pretty much every single person Merab has fought stands back up after they get taken down. That is not the risk here. So I think the more appropriate question when looking at this matchup is, can Sean manage the distance between him and Merab well enough that he can't just shoot willy-nilly? And, in terms of elite skill sets that Sean brings to the table, that is what he does. That is what he's probably the best in the UFC at doing. Managing distance, footwork, combined with the fact that he's insanely accurate, an amazing counter striker. He can knock you out with one punch. He has rocked every single person he's fought in the UFC, period. He's never had a fight where he has not rocked his opponent. So, how does Merab win this fight? I mean, that's my question to you. When Sean O'Malley fought Aljamain Sterling, that was a matchup where it was really life or death if Sean got taken down, because Aljo is one of the best back takers in the UFC. His rear naked choke is nasty. He was bigger than Sean, stronger, and Sean fought that fight with essentially a broken rib, and he could not grapple for 5 weeks leading into that fight. That was a life or death about getting taken down. That is a matchup where Sean was fucked if he got taken down. And what we saw from there was Sean was constantly on his bike. He was never, ever standing still, constantly circling, feinting, jabbing, and teeping. And Aljo could not close the distance for the life of him. And Sean did not throw a single right hand until Aljamain threw one first. The second Aljo had to extend because nothing was happening, Sean countered him immediately. And then you go back at Merab, and he does not close distance very intelligently. When he fought Henry Cejudo, he really struggled with Cejudo's movement. Henry is 5'3" and a quarter. And he was doing essentially kind of what Sean tries to do. Henry was avoiding staying in the pocket. He was on the outside, feinting, moving. He was trying to make Merab close the distance with him. And, as soon as Merab did, he got caught with a clean left hook, the exact same left hook that Marlon Moraes landed on him, just because Merab doesn't close distance very well. He kind of just goes at you. Might throw a 1-2 and then explodes at you, and he leaves himself open. In fact, Henry's corner themselves even noticed this. They said to him,
"So our Chuck picked up the pseudo corner did tell him in Spanish that they feel like his movement is giving Dvalishvili problems."
But the irony is, as soon as Anik said that, Henry immediately started slowing down. He really started fatiguing, and that is where it started going downhill for him. That is when he started staying in the pocket a bit too long, and that's when he started getting overwhelmed. I mean, it all came down to Henry starting to get stationary. That is what Merab wants. That is where Merab shines the most. When he's fighting somebody who's stationary. When he's fighting someone standing right in front of him. That's why he was able to shoot so much against Jose Aldo. It's why he was able to shoot so much against Peter Yan, because these guys, that is just their style. They stand right in front of you. But Sean O'Malley is tailor-made to fight somebody like Merab. His movement is kryptonite to Merab's style. I mean, even if Merab is able to get in on some takedowns, he's never going to finish him with those takedowns, and Sean has 5 rounds to knock him out, which is a very long time for somebody who I just do not think is super defensively sound. I mean, the only thing I can think of that could lead into Merab's favor is maybe Sean will be more willing to step in with right hands and go for the kill earlier, just because he's not as worried about Merab completing any takedowns. Because again, against Aljamain Sterling, he didn't throw a single right hand until Aljo did first. I mean, if he whiffs on some right hands, that is how Merab is going to get deep on takedowns, and then maybe he can start fatiguing him, and then maybe he can start taking over. But what the Cheeto fight showed was that Sean does have cardio to go all 5 rounds. Now, of course, though, that was in a context where it was essentially just a kickboxing match where Sean is very comfortable. So, maybe if you mix in the grappling heavily, he will fatigue a lot more. But, if Sean fights with any sort of an intelligent game plan, which I think is doing essentially exactly what he did against Aljo, I think this is very lopsided. I don't think this is a very close fight. And at this point, the only thing I'm wondering is this matchup even deserving of a definitive breakdown? I think there is a lot more I can talk about, but, again, I don't know if it matters. I don't know if it matters. I mean, I don't know. You guys tell me.